Occasionally you'll hear people say things like, science and God are contradictory. Science has buried God, science has done away with God. You can hear those kind of things kicking around the culture. But it's a myth, and it's a myth particularly because it misses something important. And one of the things it misses is that in recent decades, science, particularly physics and cosmology, have actually provided us with a wealth of evidence that actually point in the God direction. One very famous example of this would be something that's come to be called the fine-tuning argument. What is that? How does it work? Well, it goes like this. It's been observed really since the 1970s that built into the laws of physics are some numbers, some constants pre-programmed into the laws of physics that if those numbers weren't absolutely precisely right, there would be nothing at all in existence. No matter, no universe, and certainly no intelligent life like ourselves. Give you a couple of examples. The first one that's been talked about for decades is the gravitational constant. That's the number programmed into the laws of physics that determines how strong gravitational attraction is. And it's very important when we look at things like the orbits of planets and so on. But where the gravitational constant becomes really interesting is when we think about the Big Bang. So the Big Bang, of course, is the standard understanding in physics now of how the universe began billions of years ago. But if the gravitational constant, if the force of gravity had been just a tiny, tiny bit bigger than it is, then shortly after the Big Bang, everything would have collapsed in on itself and there would be no universe. On the other hand, if the gravitational constant were a little bit weaker than it is, then after the Big Bang, everything would have been flung outwards. There'd have been no time for stars and planets and galaxies to form. And again, there would have been no universe. That's an interesting coincidence. An even more spectacular one is a constant called the low entropy condition, and that determines and controls how after the Big Bang stars and planets and so forth cluster and form and so on. And that's a number that's very, very, very precisely fine-tuned. In fact, Roger Penrose, a British cosmologist, a mathematician, an atheist as far as I'm aware, Roger on one occasion remarked that that number is fine-tuned to a precision of 1 in 10 to 10 to the 123rd power. Now, if you're not a mathematician, I'm not a mathematician, what does that number mean? Is it impressive? Is it big? Well, Roger helps us out. Roger says, imagine that you took every particle in the known universe and you wrote a 0 down on that particle. You would run out of particles before you had written that number down. That is how fine-tuned the universe is. And physics is full of these kind of numbers, these kind of coincidences. How do we explain them? Well, there are really only three possibilities. Possibility number one, it's dumb luck. We have simply struck lucky in the cosmic lottery. Thank goodness all the numbers are right, or we wouldn't be here. Problem with that, that's not science. Appealing to luck gets us precisely nowhere. In fact, luck is the explanation we reach for when we don't have an answer. We go, I don't know, maybe I just got lucky. So that's non-science. Option number two is to say, well, it's all very well, Andy, to ask those questions, but if our numbers hadn't come up in the cosmic lottery, we wouldn't be here to ask the question. So the very fact we're asking this question, that we have our existence, shows the universe was fine-tuned. Now, you may be looking at this going, that's a crazy argument. But seriously, that is an argument that's advanced by some atheist physicists of going, don't ask the question, because the very fact you can ask the question shows the numbers are right in the first place. In fact, to show you how bizarre that is, think of a common illustration that's used to show what we're kind of dealing with. Imagine it's wartime. Imagine you've been captured by the opposite side, and the opposite side decide to execute you. So they take you back, out the back of the prison, they tie you to a wooden post, 100 trained marksmen line up, 50 paces away, training their rifles on you. You close your eyes, you hear the order, and you hear 100 guns go bang, 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 and as the echo of the shots die away, you realise you're still alive. Now, it is certainly the case that if they hadn't all missed, you wouldn't be there to ask the question. But the fact of the matter is they did all miss, and simply saying, well, there's no question to answer gets us nowhere. Something has happened. Some conspiracy, something has happened to engineer the fact that 100 soldiers all failed to hit you. Which means when it comes to the universe, something requires explanation. So if dumb luck doesn't get us anywhere, trying to explain the question away and sweep it under the carpet doesn't get us anywhere, what's the third possibility? Well, the third possibility is the reason the universe is fine-tuned is there is some kind of mind or higher power behind the universe that's designed it that way. Interestingly, one of the most influential British cosmologists of the 20th century was a chap called Fred Hoyle. It was actually Fred Hoyle who coined the term Big Bang. Committed atheist for most of his career, but in one of the last journal articles he wrote before his death, he'd stumbled across the fine-tuning enigma. And he wrote these words. He said, the more I study the laws of physics and explore these things, the more it becomes obvious to me, that a super intellect has monkeyed with the laws of physics and the laws of chemistry, and there are no blind forces in nature worth speaking about. Sadly, I don't think Fred ever continued his journey beyond that observation, but I think he's dead right. And I think fine-tuning makes hugely more sense if there is some kind of God behind the universe. A God like the God of the Bible, who is a perfect designer, who has brought into reality this incredibly beautifully designed universe. Don't see science and faith as at war with each other. See science, especially the fine-tuning argument, as one more clue that there is a God behind this universe.